Disaster struck, and your friends and family are there at your house, and they've overstayed their welcome, and it doesn't look like they're leaving anytime soon. This is the final episode of a 4-part series on who's coming to dinner, and this one deals with health, security, and harmony, and dealing with those external threats and internal threats. Join us for this video because planning makes all the difference. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and today we have with us Dr. Kyle Christensen, who is author of this worksheet, Who's Coming to Dinner? And this is actually the final episode in a 4-part series where we have talked about who's coming to dinner, who's showing up to dinner, or who's showing up to your door during a crisis, and did they bring, is it family, friends, friends of friends, in-laws? In-laws of in-laws, like who's coming to dinner and how to plan. So that's what the first episode was, and about who's in charge. And then we moved on to food and who cooks the food, how you take care of all of that. And then we just did sanitation in episode 3, which was really good. And so now for our final episode, we're going to talk about security, health, and harmony when you've got a whole bunch of people together. So Dr. Christensen, why don't you introduce yourself really quickly again to our audience and teach us?
Thanks. I'm Dr. Kyle Christensen. I've been practicing and helping people to get healthy for, over 40 years now. And again, passionate about what I do, love what I do. And people ask me, when are you going to be retiring? And it's like, I don't even see that in the future. Maybe someday, but anyways.
That's good, because we still need you.
Well, but again, our goal is, I tell people, ultimately we want to be a good instrument in God's hands. And I believe that's true. And so God has given each of us different interests and skills and abilities. And it's important that we don't keep them to ourselves. We bless the lives of others. And through our prepping efforts, we plan on blessing the lives of others as best we can. And so that's what we do.
Okay, so now we have a whole bunch of people who are now living in our space. How do we handle security?
So here's the interesting thing. Security, everything you do will fall to pieces if, quote, thieves break through and steal, if things are disrupted. And security, to be honest with you, is best with somebody who's got some knowledge and some experience. And, we obviously look to people who have, let's say, military training or law enforcement training, and they will be aware of things that many of the other of us, we just won't. And so it's a fine line. If you've seen the movie Homestead, we look at, the issues they have there with security. And again, you don't want the biggest, baddest guy that's most well-armed to be, ruling the roost. But in the same sense, we need to keep ourselves and those under our stewardship safe. And so we find that communication is vitally important. Having somebody who can be in charge of communication within the community and as well as within the outside world. I recommend people, get licensed with a ham radio. And that way you can tap into, the communication that's going on around. You can talk to those that may, give you a heads up as what's going on and what you need to do to be prepared. Part of security is not being a lone wolf, but having, not only your tribe, but others are, around you that are going to be, working in tandem with all of our needs. And so security is important. Again, from threats, coming from the outside in as well as from the inside out. And so maintaining relative harmony, within your group. One of the great skills that some people have and some people don't have is negotiation. And so, can somebody, diffuse issues before they become, crisis or critical? Much of martial arts training is teaching you how to avoid a fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's an important thing to consider. Relative, safety around the perimeter. Are you trying to defend, a home that's on a tenth of an acre, or do you have multiple acres? Are you within a community that can work together so that, again, we're able to keep things safe? One of the things that is done with people that live in communities where hunting is popular is firearm safety. And so everybody needs to understand firearm safety, and how to handle a weapon, not just a firearm, but how to handle a weapon, and who gets to you know again use things. You don't want a loose cannon. You don't want, and sometimes we see this. We think, people think that they're going to be the tough guy, and they're going to defend, and that can be scary. And so, again, having people that have adequate skills and training regarding security, I think, is important. And it's probably needs to be more than just somebody who's watched a few videos.
Certainly. You want somebody that's
Hopefully.
got hands-on muscle memory kinds of experience that they can draw on.
And this kind of segues a little bit into emotional health with all of this, because the situation might be okay and it might be really scary, but no matter what it is, they're not in their home. They're surrounded by other people, and you don't know what life looks like a month from now or 2 months from now, and everything can get really hard. So how do we handle emotional health within our tribe?
And this is huge, because, again, if people are displaced, that's stressful. And depression and anxiety and PTSD, if particularly if somebody has lost a loved one, and and if the world has gone crazy, and they come into your tribe, and all of a sudden you're ready to go, and this is going to be your job, and the kids come out and they say, mama's sick, mama's depressed, mama can't function, or whatever the situation is. And how do you deal with that? And so there's been a fair amount that's been written as far as how do you deal with trauma, how do you deal with tragedy, how do you deal with some of these things. And there are some definite skills and tools that are available. But the reality of it is when somebody is, for example, if somebody is suffering from severe depression, they can't get out of there by themselves, and so they need somebody who has some skills and abilities. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a professionally trained therapist, but, again, somebody who is able to help somebody whose life is in crisis. And a lot of it is keeping people busy, right? And so we know when people are in a situation where there's not a lot to do, creating a lot to do is important. Whether it's singing or playing games, or putting on a play, doing something that is going to get people involved and motivated and away from the situation that they're in, because it's possible that situations can be quite dire.
Yeah.
And so the idea is let's get to work. Let's do something. And so part of your preps needs to be games, right? You need to have
Like
you need
that.
to have a deck of cards. You need to have Scrabble. You need to have some of these old time non-computer games.
Mhm.
And so imagine if all of a sudden you've got these kids, and we'll pick on the teenage boys who live to play their video games. All of a sudden there's no games. You think there's going to be some depression and anxiety associated with that?
Oh
And
yeah.
so, again, you rally the forces. Whatever you need to do to keep people's minds active and busy and engaged.
I see this plethora of people coming, right, with all these different personalities. Some of them have mental illness challenges. Some of them have addictions to drugs or alcohol, which they may not have access to anymore, right? Um, I just see this huge thing that could be overwhelming trying to mesh all these personalities together.
We joke, but it's not really a joke that the zombies, in the last days apocalypse, are going to be people who can't get their psych meds. And so again, if somebody can't get, whatever it is, um, that could be an issue. And how do you deal with somebody who's literally gone crazy? and
I have
and
a
so
sister who's schizophrenic, and it's terrifying when she's off her meds.
Yeah, but the point is when we're dealing with people in crisis, somebody needs to be able to take charge. Somebody needs to be able to, rally the troops. If you will, we need to check up on people. If somebody is again depression, anxiety, whatever it is, we need to help people however we can. Which kinds of bring us into the healthcare mode. And so I, I'm an herbalist, and I make herbal remedies, and we use herbal remedies, and they absolutely work wonderfully. And I have a lot of people take our classes, and they make their own remedies, and they don't use them. And they say, I get people calling and say, I made this this tincture, this extract from you, 5 years ago. Is it still good? Now, if it's an alcohol extract, the answer is, of course it is. It's still good. But it also tells me that when somebody had the bladder infection or the cold or the flu or whatever it is, they didn't use it. And so the idea is, if you're going to use something natural, use it. Get comfortable and start using that. Do we need to have medications stored in at hand? And the answer is, of course we do. But if you look at the doctor's warning on Tylenol and ibuprofen, it says don't use this more than 3 weeks continuously. Now, how many people have been using their Tylenol every day for the last 3 or 5 years, right? And so again, that's going to affect your kidney. It's going to affect your liver. And so we generally try to lean towards things that are going to be the least harmful in the long term. But you need to store what you're going to use, and so you need to have things on hand. You want to have some Benadryl. If somebody's having an allergic reaction to something, you want to have pain relievers. You want to have insulin's a tricky one, right? Because it needs to be refrigerated. And so do you, if the power goes out, do you have a small refrigerator with a generator to power that you can keep it as at least as long as you can? Most medications, they won't let you, prescriptions let you have a year's supply of that. And so you need to accommodate for what you have at your availability. I tell people one of the most valuable preps that we can have is our health. And so if you've got a health issue, is there something that you can do to get better, or at least to improve your situation? That's important.
I
Very
absolutely
well
agree.
stated. I think that is so critical. Starting right now to build our health.
Yeah.
Um, I,
Do the best we can,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I know for us, we have planted all over our landscape, in the front, in the back, in our gardens, all kinds of different medicinal herbs, right? They're beautiful flowers. Most of the time, people won't even know what they are, but it's really important to me that I learn to harvest them, and to use them. And so I'm always plugging something in you, huh?
Yeah.
And again, it's using what you've got, becoming familiar with it, so that it's not scary, so that this is how it works. Often when somebody is sick at our house, the rule is if anybody's sick, everybody takes the herbs, because it's safe as a preventative as well as a restorative. And that's, but again, becoming, comfortable and familiar with it. Another aspect of healthcare, of course, is being trained to handle injuries, to handle traumas. I wrote a book years ago, Herbal First Aid in Healthcare.
I have that one.
That that again, you can open the book and you can say, okay, we've got a tick. What do we do with a tick? Or we've got this problem or that problem, and what are some natural ways to do it? Sometimes the natural way to do something is the medical way to do something, right? And so natural healthcare can get you so far and it can do wonders, but sometimes you may need somebody that needs a surgical intervention, or or some other means that you may not have available. And so again, having somebody who's trained, do we want to have to do surgeries and operations, in our kitchen at some point? Heavens, we hope not.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk just a little bit about was spiritual health. And that, the thing that suddenly you've got all these people coming in, because right now, Jonathan and I, we worship together, we worship similarly, and so there's not an issue, right? But when suddenly you have other people coming over that have very different beliefs, very different ways of practicing their faith, how do you work all that out?
I think we practice our religious belief. We are kind, we are loving, we are compassionate. I think that most major religions, if not all major religions, are based on principles of kindness and generosity, and doing what is best for ourselves as well as others. And so it's not necessarily our opportunity to try to convert people into our way of thinking, but showing love, showing respect, and expecting to be shown love. I tell people, I just want to be around good people. I want people that are going to be, again, kind and loving and generous, and again, in time of crisis, it's tricky. It's
tricky. Everything's tricky. But we'll get through it all. And I think one of the big things to mention here is the more advanced preparations we can make, the more we've looked through this, we've made decisions ahead of time, we've gotten supplies that we might need, that we can foresee needing, and actually talk about this. Talk about it, not just between us, who would be the hosts, but between those who may be coming, and what the expectation would be, and how they would be expected to help. And then if that's something that they're not comfortable with, that's a good time for them to make the decision to have a different plan.
Comes back to this handout, this document, looking at these things, thinking about them in advance. This can't wait. We can't wait until we're in the middle of a crisis. These things right now that's the critical path here, is using a list, whether it's this one or some other, where you think about all of this right now and just put it all out on the table and get the best ideas and work through a process of preparing for whatever may come, whoever may be coming for dinner.
And again, it's really no different than your CPR training or your whatever emergency training that is involved. And again, we hope that nothing happens, that things are gonna bump along, but just in case. It'd be nice to know how to do CPR, just in case. It's nice to know how to do the Heimlich maneuver, just in case. It's nice to know how to settle somebody down who's freaking out, just in case, right? And so that's kind of where we are.
Do you have any Parting words for our audience, Dr. Christensen?
Oh, I think a lot of it is listen to your heart, listen to the subtle promptings that we all get. If something says, something tells you go out and buy some cloth diapers, well, maybe you should do that. If it doesn't, then don't worry about it. Again, be open to the promptings that we receive.
Great words of wisdom.
And love each other and take care of each other.
Build
Right.
our community.
It's about community. It's about each other. Life is about relationships. That's what you don't want to be the angry guy holed up in the mountains with his guns, shooting at everybody who's trying to get his stuff. It's about families. It's about relationships. It's about extending our arms and our loves. But it's about being smart. It's not being a fool, not being a sucker. Anticipate issues before they happen, and you'll weather the storm much better.
Well stated.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on and for imparting your wisdom to us and giving us some real good things that we need to think about and think through. Thank you for providing these worksheets for us. We will leave a link in the description of the video, and it will take you to a place where you can download PDFs of all of Dr. Christensen's stuff that he feels is important for us to have, including the dishwasher soap we talked in the other video, right? And like I said, this is the fourth in a series of videos. So make sure if you missed one of the previous episodes, go back and watch it, because I think there's some really good information in here.
Absolutely.
And now for the question of our day. Now that you know who's coming for dinner, what are you going to do about the security, health, and harmony in your little tribe? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.